There we are.
They'll both do the thing and get you to the
Okay,
place.
why are you not in the picture?
I am in the other one.
Because there's a delay.
Oh,
It's
Oh.
close.
There she
there
is.
you are. Okay, I just making sure.
No, I didn't
Hey.
go invisible.
Okay.
Do you feel invisible? Because you shouldn't.
Aww.
We can see you. You're bright, shiny light.
This elf has Mr. Spock ears.
It
sure does.
It's from the planet Vulcan.
Planet Vulcan.
And what I've learned is that someday when I do go white,
Mhm.
I'll look cute in pigtails.
You bet.
You will. Hey, we have 2 people.
Yay.
Yay. Hi, people.
I might have people on the other end too.
Yeah, go have a look.
But all the screens are kind of weird this week because
I
we're down a
know.
monitor.
We're
Oh, look at that.
Uh,
Do you want me to fix it?
Ooh,
Triple-
no, that's
triple
okay.
biscuits.
We're all right.
I thought I clicked that button. I must have skipped it.
That's okay. We got
There we
it.
go.
Just-
Well, folks, we are back for our second last,
Second
12
last.
Yeah.
second
Second
last
It's been
12
fun.
days of Christmas.
It's been
Well,
fun.
we can always do something else afterwards.
It's true.
It's a while till Christmas. Hi, Anne.
Oh, no, I think we're all just going to go home and panic, so.
No, that's okay.
Not how you guys handled the last 2 weeks of December before Christmas.
I'm definitely going home in panic, so.
I'm going home and panic, so.
And are we ready, choir?
I think so.
Yes.
All
Okay.
right. So, 3, 2, 1. On the 11th day of Christmas, my true love gave to me 11 hours of long arming, 10 perfect panels, 9 nifty notions, 8 easy patterns, 7 snipping scissors, 6 cutting rulers, 5 golden threads, 4 meters of fabric, 3 3-yard quilt books, 2 special classes, so I can use my new sewing machine. Yay!
Nice job.
Thank you,
You're
choir.
very welcome. Nice to be with you.
Yeah. Long arming. This
Long
lots of
arming.
fun.
It,
I like
it is
long arming.
lots of
Are you
fun.
guys sneaking out?
Yeah, we're singing out.
Okay, me too.
Big one,
Bye.
goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Oh, they're leaving me. Oh, no.
Barb is our long armor. You got the perfect person to talk to.
Yeah, yeah, I think I can handle this one. Maybe. 11 hours of long arming, my goodness. First of all, though, before we jump into that, isn't that gorgeous? That's that stuff behind me. I've got all of our nice people saying hello. I love to see all the comments that you send in. Yes, this is one of those. If you remember a little while back, Chelsea and I did a sneak peek session, and some of that fabric has arrived. So this is Happiness Blooms, and we have it in big pieces on the bolt. We have medium-sized pieces. We have little pieces, our little charm packs here. We have even littler pieces, jelly rolls, and we have gorgeous, gorgeous panels to work from. So Happiness Blooms, available on the charcoal background, on the creamy white background to piece into your quilt. So it's nice to see those things that we've kind of talked about as coming actually show up on our doorstep. So that's one fun thing that you can put on your Christmas list now that that's here. I think that one's going to be really, really popular because it's pretty. It's got flowers, and this time of year we really need flowers, don't we? The other thing that Chelsea stashed up here behind me is the Amanda Murphy Long Arm Bundle. Now that is for those of you fortunate enough to own your own long arm. So it comes with a whole schwack of 5,000 meter spools of thread in the most popular or commonly used colors. And I don't know, a gazillion Amanda Murphy designs, we shall say. Package of needles, some thread snips, a great bundle for the long armor. Put that one on your Christmas list too. That's a good one. So, yeah, we might have to sweet talk Leah and see if we can get that one kind of rubbed into your uh, purchase of a long arm. She kind of said something about that, but
I just got a call.
I'm on Facebook right now, so I'm afraid. Why don't you talk to our Chelsea here? So, yeah, we have lots of long arming possibilities for you. So, if you followed our little jingle here, you know you've been working on those 3-yard quilts from our 3-yard quilt books. So that's what I've kind of based my long arming 11 hours on. So you have 11 hours of long arming. What is that going to calculate out to? Well, like this nice lady that stopped by here today, 11 hours of long arming. If you've done our certification class, I've done the calculations. You could probably quilt 3 or 4 of those 3-yard quilt books in 11 hours. Most renters are taking 2.5, 3 hours, maybe 3.5 if they're being really, really particular on that. That's not too bad. How many of those quilts can you whip together before Christmas? Maybe you haven't done the certification class and you kind of like free motion quilting. Don't forget that you can also rent time on our Bernina sit down, our Q20 machine. Got 20 inches of throat space and a nice big table to work on. So you can free motion quilt your quilts on that. Costs a little bit less, $25 an hour to rent that one. No training needed. We're there to kind of get you started on it. So you could quilt even more of your quilts that way. But probably the easiest way, barring buying your own long arm and quilting at 11 o'clock at night in your pajamas, the easiest way to get your quilting done is to bring me your quilts and I will happily quilt them for you. So how does that process work? What do you need to do? How do you kind of get ready for it? And what are you looking at when you show up? It's very easy. If you've never used our long arming services before, all you have to do is bring in your quilt top and your quilt backing, and bring batting if you have it. Otherwise, we can take it off the roll. And when you come in, we're going to measure your quilt top because that's how we charge you. We're going to make sure your backing is big enough, and I'm going to tell you a few tips on that in a minute. And we'll decide on what sort of design you want quilted on your quilt and what thread color you want to use, because thread's included when we quilt your quilt for you. So yeah, that's probably the easiest way. So how many quilts could we do in 11 hours? Well, if they're 3-yard quilts, I just quilted 3 of them today. So, and that was in probably, I did take a lunch break, so maybe 6.5 hours. So you could probably get us to quilt 5 or 6 of your long 3-yard quilts in 11 hours. That's a pretty good deal. So what do you have to do to prepare to bring a quilt in for me to quilt for you? Well, I got a cheat sheet, and I'm happy to share this with anybody. If you're interested and you forget, I can print these off. So when it comes to long arming, almost more important than your quilt top is your quilt backing, because we need that backing to be big enough. The worst problems we have with long arming quilts is if the backing's not quite big enough. So we tell people 6 inches bigger at the top, 6 inches bigger at the bottom, lets us clamp it comfortably on the rollers, because it's the backing that goes on the machine. So I've got a few tips here. Your backing should be 6 inches bigger, we say all round. 4 to 6 on the sides works. Lets us load it comfortably. If you've got the perfect fabric and it's not quite, it's only like an inch bigger, sew an extra strip of fabric top and bottom, just scrap fabric. It's going to come off. That way we can center your quilt nicely on it. So that's the size. What else about backing? If you have to piece your backing, if at all possible, try and sew that seam so it runs this way, not this way on your backing. If it runs this way and when we're rolling it around the machine, no problem. If it runs this way, that seam makes a really tight little band and you don't get quite as nice smooth backing fabric on your quilt as if you run it horizontally. It's not unquiltable, but it definitely makes a nicer product. When you're sewing that backing together, try and sew a wider than average seam and press your seam open. We're going for flatness here. We want that backing to just be smooth and calm and relaxed when we load our quilts. And give it a good pressing. Your iron is your best friend when it comes to preparing your quilt for the long arm. So you got your backing all ready, you got the seam sewn, you got it pressed. Trim the selvages off again, reduce bulk on that one. Things to be aware of when it comes to quilt backings. Fabrics like Cuddle, Minky, Fireside, they make great quilt backings. Lovely, soft, they show the quilting beautifully, but they weigh more. They're a little heavier. So think about it. You're doing a lap quilt, put your Fireside on the back of it. You're doing the 108 square king size quilt. A Fireside backing on a quilt that size is going to make that quilt really heavy. You're going to have to drag it around. Maybe that's what you want. Not a problem. Not a problem for us. Quilts up beautifully, but it's something to consider. Pieced backings work great on the long arm, and they can put a little bit of interest into your quilt. So that's backings. Got those taken care of. Did you know doesn't matter how big or how small your quilt is? This time of year I'm getting lots of queries about table runners, placemats. Can they be quilted on the long arm? Sure they can. As long as that backing fits on the machine, I can load it and I can put down a dozen pin cushions, 4 placemats, a big long table runner, doesn't matter. So yeah, we can go small, not a problem. So that's backings. What about the quilt top? Well, the way I've said in here, first of all, prepare it right. If you don't like to pre-wash your fabric, at least press it really well before you start building your quilt. Sew it right. And if you've participated in any of my classes, you know the mantra. Sew the seam, press the seam. Press as you go. The long arm machine doesn't care if your points don't match or if your colors aren't in fashion. It does care how well pressed your seams are, and that's why I like to press my seams open, again reducing the bulk. Make sure that you haven't missed one of those seams. You know what happens? You go to sew the fabric and one slips, and it's, double check before you bring it in. Doesn't hurt. Properly put your borders on, and there's lots of instructions available. I've got handouts I can give you on putting your borders on. And don't add embellishments on your quilt, buttons, bows, rickrack, that sort of thing, because if we're doing edge to edge with the computer, it quilts right across, and you don't want those things to catch. So consider adding those down the road later on. If you do have those on your quilt and it's really important you put them on ahead of time, then it's going to put your quilt up into custom quilting, which I love to do, but it will be a little more costly for you. And when you're all done with your quilt top, give it a final good pressing. This is the place to use your Mary Ellen's Best Press, to use a bit of steam with your iron. Press, don't iron. Fold it up, tuck it on a hanger, put it in a bag, doesn't matter. Bring it into us here. And things that don't matter, not too much anyways, when it comes to long arming your quilt. Size. The size of your quilt top is how we calculate your costs, but it's the size of your backing fabric that affects how we load it on the machine. So as I said, as long as your backing fabric fits, then we can quilt small right up to large. Now the largest quilt backing we can handle is about 120 inches wide. The length is almost unlimited, but bear that in mind. I had a quilt come in last week where the backing was 3 strips. I couldn't load it that way on the machine. It was literally just too big. We had to change it, turn it sideways. The shape of your quilt top doesn't matter. Table runners with pointed ends, not a problem. Tree skirts like the one Leah's been working on, doesn't matter. We can quilt those on the long arm. Zigzag tops to quilts because you've done a nice chevron piecing, that doesn't matter. We can still quilt those on the long arm for you, or we can teach you how to do it. Fabrics. If you can get a needle through it, we should be able to quilt it. Now, there are some fabrics that are a little trickier, admittedly. Some of the heavy upholstery weight fabrics, those seams are a little tricky to quilt. Denim can be a little tricky, so we have to deal with that specially. But other than that, yeah, we can quilt all kinds of things on the long arm. So don't be afraid to branch out and try something special. We can always talk about it and make sure we get it just the way you want it. And finally, as those of you in my listening audience who do machine embroidery know, fusible web and stabilizers are not usually a problem for the long arm. Worst that can happen is the needle gets a bit gummy and then we just have to clean it frequently. So that's not an issue. Don't be afraid to use fusible web, basting sprays, stabilizers in your quilt. There's ways of dealing with them. The trickiest thing with stabilizers, and I only run into this occasionally, is when people are doing piecing in the hoop with their machine embroidery, and some of those seams get really, really thick. So that's going to affect what we quilt, but it doesn't make your quilt unquiltable. So I hope that sort of takes some of the mystery out of getting your quilts quilted. Ultimately, what else have I got on my list? You could take our free motion class as one of your special classes and quilt your quilt at home. That's still available. Or you could spend 11 hours hand quilting your quilt, which I find particularly satisfying to do, but you're only going to get one small quilt done in 11 hours. So lots of options for sewing your layers of fabric together, because ultimately that's what I tell people in certification. We're sewing layers of fabric together. It's not brain surgery. We're going to be as careful as we can be, but relax. It will all be fine. So I look forward to seeing what you've been working on through our 12 days of Christmas sewing. I hope you get a new sewing machine to practice on. I have to admit, I have just quilted, as I say, 4 of the 3-yard quilts from the 3-yard quilt books, and I really like the designs in those books. So give those guys a try. As Leah was saying before she scooted away from here, yeah, we're down to Christmas Madness sewing. We're not as busy as previous years in the long arm, so don't be afraid to bring your quilts in to me. There's still time. I'm going to say if you get them in this week, we can pretty much get them to you by Christmas, especially if you let us know, I really need it by the 23rd, we can manage it. So don't delay. Time is fleeting on this sort of thing, but yeah, we can long arm that for you. Or we can teach you how to long arm. That's what I have for you today, folks. One more day in our 12 days of Christmas to go, coming later this week with Leah. And until then, take care, everybody. Have a great Tuesday afternoon and drive safe out there. It's still kind of slippery. Look forward to the warm-up that's supposed to be coming tomorrow. We'll see if that materializes or not. Until then, nice talking to everyone, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.